I stood at the edge of my cornfield at 6 in the morning, staring at what looked like the aftermath of a hurricane, except there had been no hurricane in rural Nebraska last night. My 20-acre farm in Lancaster County, just outside Lincoln, had been systematically turned into a garbage heap overnight. Broken concrete slabs, rotting wooden beams, rusted metal pipes, shattered drywall, and what appeared to be an entire demolished deck were scattered across my western field, like someone had played the world's worst game of Tetris with construction waste. My name is Samuel Everett, and I had moved to this property 3 years ago after selling my tech startup in San Francisco. I wanted peace, quiet, and the simple life of growing corn and soybeans. What I got instead was the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association breathing down my neck since day one, despite my farm technically being outside their jurisdiction. The HOA had been trying to force me to sell ever since they expanded the subdivision right up to my property line. They claimed my farm was an eyesore that lowered their property values. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos, my hands shaking with rage. This was not just littering. This was industrial-scale illegal dumping. There had to be at least 15 tons of construction debris spread across nearly 2 acres of my land. The corn that had been growing there, almost ready for harvest, was completely destroyed, crushed under massive concrete chunks and piles of splintered wood. My border collie, Max, barked at a particularly large piece of debris that looked suspiciously like someone's entire front porch. I walked closer and noticed something that made my blood run cold. Painted on one of the wooden beams in fading white letters was an address: 2847 Meadowbrook Lane. That was inside the HOA subdivision. I drove my truck along the fence line, documenting everything. The more I looked, the more addresses I found. Someone had demolished multiple properties in the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision and decided my farm would be the perfect dump site. The audacity was breathtaking. They had cut through my fence in 3 places, driven heavy machinery across my land, and scattered debris everywhere with what must have been multiple dump trucks and excavators. I called the sheriff's office first. Deputy Martinez arrived within 20 minutes, and his jaw dropped when he saw the scope of the damage. "Samuel, this is bad," he said, walking through the debris field with his own camera. "This is going to be criminal trespassing, illegal dumping, property destruction, and probably a dozen environmental violations. You said you think you know who did this?" "The HOA has been harassing me for years," I said. "And look at these addresses. All Meadowbrook Estates properties. Someone in that subdivision either did this or knows exactly who did." Deputy Martinez nodded grimly. "I will file a report and start an investigation. Do not touch anything yet. We might need to bring out a forensics team." After he left, I sat on my porch and tried to calm down. My phone rang. It was Veronica Barrett, my girlfriend, who worked as an environmental lawyer in Lincoln. We had been dating for 8 months, and she was the smartest person I knew. "Samuel, I just saw your text messages. Are you serious about the photos?" Her voice was tight with anger. "Dead serious. Someone dumped probably 20 tons of construction waste on my western field, destroyed 2 acres of corn ready for harvest. I'm coming over right now. Do not talk to anyone from the HOA until I get there. This is not just a civil matter anymore. If they did this deliberately, we are talking about felony charges." She arrived 30 minutes later in her silver sedan, dressed in jeans and a work shirt instead of her usual courtroom attire. Veronica was in her early 30s with sharp green eyes and auburn hair she kept tied back in a practical ponytail. She surveyed the damage with the practiced eye of someone who had handled environmental litigation for a decade. "This is insane," she said, picking up a piece of paper that had blown against my fence. "Look at this. It is a work order from Meadowbrook Estates HOA to Killian Demolition Services for the removal of 3 properties scheduled for renovation." I took the paper from her. It was dated 5 days ago and signed by the HOA president, a woman named Patricia Whitmore. I had met Patricia exactly twice, and both times she had made it clear she thought my farm was a blight on her perfect suburban paradise. "They paid a demolition company and then what? Told them to dump it on my land," I said. Veronica was already on her phone. "I'm calling the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. This is a major illegal dumping case, and there could be hazardous materials in this debris. You see that insulation? That could be asbestos. And those pipes? Possible lead. The next few hours were a blur of officials. The state environmental inspector arrived, then another deputy, then a detective from the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office named Detective Reeves. He was a no-nonsense man in his 50s who looked like he had seen every variety of human stupidity. "Mr. Everett," he said, shaking my hand, "I've been doing this job for 27 years, and I've never seen an HOA do something this brazen. We are going to get to the bottom of this." By noon, my farm looked like a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Yellow tape marked off the debris field, and investigators were documenting everything. Detective Reeves found tire tracks leading back to the access road that ran along the subdivision. "Heavy machinery," he said. "Probably a large excavator and multiple dump trucks. This was not a quick operation. We are talking hours of work, likely during the night. Your neighbors hear anything?" My nearest neighbor was half a mile away. I shook my head. My closest neighbor is old Joe Peterson, and he is deaf as a post without his hearing aids, which he takes out at night. Detective Reeves made some notes. "We are going to talk to this demolition company and the HOA. Somebody is going to face serious charges here." Veronica pulled me aside. "Samuel, I need to tell you something. I have dealt with Meadowbrook Estates HOA before. 2 years ago, they tried to sue a client of mine for having the wrong shade of beige on his house. They are notoriously aggressive and litigious. Patricia Whitmore specifically has a reputation for being ruthless." "Great," I said. "So I am dealing with criminals who also happen to be lawsuit happy." "Exactly, which is why we need to be smart about this. Let the law enforcement do their investigation, but we should also prepare for them to try and blame someone else or claim it was a contractor's error." That evening, after all the officials had left and promised to follow up, I sat on my porch and tried to process the violation. This was not just about the money, though the destroyed crops alone were worth at least $15,000, and the cleanup would cost more. This was about someone thinking they could use my property as their personal landfill, because they did not like having a working farm next to their manicured lawns. Max leaned against my leg, and I scratched behind his ears. "What do you think, boy? Should we just let the law handle this?" Max looked at me with those intelligent brown eyes, and I swear he was telling me that sometimes the law was not enough. Sometimes people needed to understand the consequences of their actions in a more direct way. I slept poorly that night, my mind churning with anger and plans for justice. The next morning, Detective Reeves called with an update. "Mr. Everett, we interviewed the demolition company. Killian Demolition Services says they were hired by the Meadowbrook Estates HOA to demolish 3 properties and dispose of the debris. They claim they were given specific disposal coordinates, and those coordinates led them to your property." "So the HOA deliberately gave them my property as the dump site," I said, feeling my rage reignite. "That is what it looks like. The demolition company has provided us with emails and text messages from someone using the HOA president's email address. We are bringing in Patricia Whitmore for questioning this afternoon." Veronica was with me when Patricia Whitmore's interview happened, though we were not present for it. Detective Reeves called us afterward. "She denied everything," he said. "Claims her email was hacked, says she had no knowledge of where the debris was being dumped, insists it was all the demolition company's error. She is lawyered up now." "What about the other HOA board members?" Veronica asked. "We are interviewing them tomorrow. But Mr. Everett, I have to be honest with you. Even if we can prove the HOA ordered this, the prosecution might be complicated. They will claim it was a contractor error, pay some fines, and their insurance might cover the damages. This could drag out for years in civil court." After he hung up, I looked at the debris field from my porch. The state had cleared me to begin cleanup, but I would have to pay for it up front and then try to recover costs later. The environmental inspector had found asbestos in some of the insulation and lead in some of the pipes, which meant I needed to hire a specialized hazardous waste removal company. The quotes I received were ranging from $30,000 to $50,000. "This is not right," I said to Veronica. "They commit a crime and I have to pay for it, then maybe get reimbursed years from now after lawyers take half?" "That is often how it works, unfortunately," she said. "Unless we can get a preliminary injunction forcing them to pay for cleanup immediately, but that could still take weeks." That night, I could not sleep again. I kept thinking about Patricia Whitmore, sitting in her perfect house, in her perfect subdivision, probably sleeping just fine, while my farm was covered in toxic debris. I thought about the HOA board members who had probably all signed off on this plan, thinking a farmer would not have the resources or knowledge to fight back properly. Then I had an idea. It was probably not a great idea. It might even be illegal. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. The next morning, I called Tommy Sullivan, an old friend who ran a hauling and excavation business in Lincoln. Tommy and I had served in the Army together, and he owed me several favors from when I had helped fund his business startup. "Tommy, I need to rent your largest dump truck and your excavator. Also, I need your expertise for a day." "What are you planning, Sam?" Tommy asked, suspicion in his voice. "Let me just say that I need to return some property to its rightful owner." There was a long pause. "This is about that HOA dumping on your farm, is not it? I saw it on the news." "Yeah." "When do you need the equipment?" "Tomorrow night." Tommy laughed. "I will do you one better. I will drive the truck myself. This I have got to see." I spent the next day making careful plans. I looked up Patricia Whitmore's address, 4521 Meadowbrook Drive, a large colonial-style house right in the center of the subdivision. I studied Google Maps satellite views, planned our route, and figured out the timing. The key was doing this quickly and getting out before anyone could stop us. Veronica figured out what I was planning that evening when she came over for dinner. "Samuel Everett, you are not seriously considering doing what I think you are considering," she said, her arms crossed. "Huh? I am just returning their property," I said innocently. "They clearly wanted this debris somewhere specific, and it ended up on my land by mistake. I am being a good neighbor and correcting that error. You're going to dump construction debris on the HOA president's property. I am going to deliver construction debris to its rightful owner." She stared at me for a long moment, then a smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "This is probably illegal. Could be criminal mischief, trespassing, definitely some civil violations. So was dumping it on my property." "True." She bit her lip, thinking. "Okay, here's what you are going to do. First, you are going to document everything. Every piece you load, every moment of the delivery. Get it all on video. Second, you are going to leave before the police arrive. Do not confront anyone, do not engage, just deliver and leave. Third, you are going to immediately report to the sheriff's office that you disposed of the debris by returning it to the address listed on the work orders. Make it clear you were simply following the chain of custody." "You are helping me plan a crime?" "I'm ensuring that if my boyfriend does something inadvisable, he does it in the smartest way possible. Also, I did not hear any of this conversation." But she was grinning. Tommy arrived at my farm at 11 o'clock the next night with a massive dump truck and an excavator on a flatbed trailer. He was not alone. He had brought his brother Marcus and 2 of his crew members, both veterans, who Tommy said were trustworthy. "Boys," Tommy said, "we are embarking on a mission of justified property return. Sam here had about 20 tons of garbage dumped on his farm by the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. We're going to help him return it." Marcus, a bear of a man with a full beard, looked at the debris field and whistled. "This is some petty nonsense. Yeah, I am in." We spent the next 4 hours loading debris. I had rented industrial lights so we could see what we were doing. We prioritized the pieces with Meadowbrook addresses clearly visible. The largest concrete slabs, the wooden beams with house numbers, the destroyed deck railings, all the most identifiable pieces went into the dump truck first. We also grabbed plenty of the asbestos insulation and lead pipes, making sure to handle them with proper safety equipment. By 3 in the morning, the dump truck was loaded with approximately 8 tons of debris. It was not everything, but it was a significant amount, especially the most obvious pieces that had addresses on them. "This is a beautiful sight," Tommy said, patting the truck's side. "Now, let us go make a delivery." I rode in the truck's cab with Tommy while the others followed in their vehicles. We had all mounted cameras on our dashboards and bodies. If we were doing this, we were documenting every second. The streets of Meadowbrook Estates were dead quiet at 3:30 in the morning. Streetlights cast everything in an orange glow. The houses were all dark, their inhabitants sleeping peacefully, unaware that justice was about to be delivered in the form of 8 tons of construction debris. Patricia Whitmore's house was easy to spot. It was one of the largest in the subdivision, a white colonial with black shutters, a perfectly manicured lawn, and a circular driveway with decorative stonework. A small sign near the mailbox read, "Whitmore Residence" in elegant script. That's it, I said. Tommy pulled the dump truck into her driveway. The truck's backup alarm was loud in the silent night, and I saw lights flick on in a few neighboring houses. "We need to move fast," Tommy said. He positioned the truck in the center of her driveway and front lawn, then activated the dump mechanism. The truck bed began to rise with a hydraulic whine. 8 tons of construction debris began sliding out, crashing down onto Patricia Whitmore's pristine driveway and lawn. Concrete slabs crushed her decorative flowers, wooden beams scattered across her grass. The demolished deck pieces landed on her front walkway. Metal pipes rolled across her driveway. Insulation and drywall chunks covered everything like toxic snow. It took maybe 90 seconds for the entire load to empty. The noise was tremendous, loud enough to wake half the neighborhood. Lights were coming on in houses up and down the street. Tommy lowered the truck bed, and we pulled out of the driveway. As we drove away, I looked back and saw the damage. Patricia Whitmore's front yard looked like a disaster zone. Her driveway was impassable, her lawn was destroyed, and sitting in the middle of it all, clearly visible in the streetlights, were wooden beams with Meadowbrook Estates addresses painted on them. "Mission accomplished," Tommy said, grinning. We drove straight out of the subdivision, passing several residents who had come out in their bathrobes to see what the noise was. None of them tried to stop us. By the time anyone thought to call the police, we were already gone. I had Tommy drop me off at my farm. "Thanks, brother," I said. "I owe you." "Are you kidding? That was the most fun I have had in months. Call me when you need to deliver the rest of it." After they left, I sat on my porch with my laptop and began uploading all the video footage to a secure cloud storage. Then, I wrote a detailed statement explaining my actions. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I called the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office non-emergency number. "This is Samuel Everett. I am calling to report that I disposed of debris that was illegally dumped on my property by returning it to the addresses listed on the materials. The debris was delivered to 4521 Meadowbrook Drive, the residence of Patricia Whitmore, president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, as the work orders and addresses on the debris indicated this was the appropriate location. I have video documentation of the entire disposal process." The dispatcher sounded confused. "Sir, are you saying you dumped construction debris at someone's house?" "I am saying I returned construction debris to its owner based on the addresses and work orders found in the debris. I am happy to provide all documentation to Detective Reeves, who is handling the original illegal dumping case." I am sure the dispatcher thought I was insane, but she took down my information and said someone would be in contact. Detective Reeves called me at 8 o'clock, and he did not sound happy. "Mr. Everett, I just got a very angry call from Patricia Whitmore, claiming you dumped 8 tons of construction debris on her property in the middle of the night." "I returned debris to the address listed on the materials," I said calmly. The work orders and multiple pieces of debris had Meadowbrook Estates addresses. Mrs. Whitmore's email was on the work orders. I simply followed the chain of custody. There was a long silence. "You cannot just dump trash on someone's property, even if they dumped it on yours first. That is vigilante justice. Is it illegal to return someone's property to them? When that property is 8 tons of construction debris dumped on their lawn at 3 in the morning? Yes, Mr. Everett, that is illegal. That is criminal mischief at minimum. Will I be arrested?" Another long pause. "I need to talk to the district attorney. But Mr. Everett, I strongly advise you not to deliver any more debris to anyone. Let the legal system handle this." "Of course, Detective. I was simply correcting what I believed to be a misplacement of materials." After I hung up, Veronica called. She was laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Samuel, it is all over the local news. Someone got photos of Patricia Whitmore's house covered in debris. The HOA is losing their minds. There's an emergency board meeting scheduled for tonight. Think I will get arrested? Maybe, but honestly, the optics are terrible for them. You returned debris that had their addresses on it to their president's house. A good lawyer could argue you were simply being helpful. Plus, you documented everything and self-reported. That shows good faith. The local news coverage was indeed extensive. By noon, every Lincoln station had run the story. HOA president's home, covered in debris after farmer takes justice into own hands, read one headline. The photos showed Patricia Whitmore standing in her driveway in a business suit, surrounded by debris, looking absolutely furious. One news crew had even interviewed some of her neighbors. An older man said, "Honestly, if the HOA really did dump this stuff on his farm first, I do not blame him for returning it. That is some poetic justice right there." The public opinion seemed to be swinging in my favor, which was unexpected, but welcome. That afternoon, I received a cease and desist letter from the HOA's lawyer, threatening to sue me for damages, harassment, and emotional distress. I forwarded it to Veronica, who called me laughing again. "They are threatening to sue you? After they illegally dumped on your farm? This is gold. I am going to have fun with this." The next day, Detective Reeves called again. "Mr. Everett, the district attorney has decided not to press criminal charges against you at this time. However, the HOA is likely to pursue civil action. Also, you need to remove the remaining debris from their president's property within 48 hours, or you will face charges." "Detective, I delivered the debris to the address indicated on the materials. How is it my responsibility to remove it?" "Mr. Everett, do not push your luck. You made your point. Now be smart about this." That evening, Veronica came over with interesting news. I have been doing some digging into the Meadowbrook Estates HOA finances. They are supposed to be a non-profit organization that manages the common areas and enforces rules. But I found something interesting. Patricia Whitmore owns a property management company called Whitmore Property Services. Guess who the HOA pays a monthly management fee to? Her own company? Exactly. She has been funneling HOA dues into her private company for years. That is a serious conflict of interest and possibly fraud. Can we use that? We can definitely report it, but more importantly, it gives us leverage. She has been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom because she profits from it. That is why she has been so aggressive about expanding the subdivision and forcing out anyone who does not fit her vision. The next day, things escalated. I received a formal lawsuit from the HOA seeking $200,000 in damages for the debris delivery, emotional distress, property damage, and punitive damages. They claimed I had engaged in harassment, trespassing, and criminal mischief. Veronica filed our response the same day. Our countersuit sought $500,000 in damages for the illegal dumping on my farm, destruction of crops, environmental contamination, emotional distress, and punitive damages. We also filed a separate complaint with the Nebraska Attorney General's office regarding Patricia Whitmore's financial conflicts of interest with the HOA. The local news was having a field day with the story. It had everything: an evil HOA, a farmer fighting back, illegal dumping, and vigilante justice. I gave one interview to the local NBC affiliate. "Look, I am not saying what I did was right," I told the reporter. "But when someone dumps 20 tons of toxic debris on your farm and destroys your crops and then claims it was an accident while hiding behind lawyers, sometimes you have to make your point in a language they understand." I simply returned their property to them. The interview went viral. Within 2 days, it had been picked up by national news outlets. Suddenly, I was getting calls from news producers in New York and Los Angeles. The story had struck a nerve with people who were tired of HOA, overreach, and corporate bullying. Patricia Whitmore made the mistake of giving her own interview. She appeared on a local morning show, perfectly coiffed and dressed, and proceeded to dig her own grave. "Mr. Everett is a menace to our community," she said. "His farm is an eyesore that lowers property values. We have been trying to work with him for years to either improve his property or sell it so we can develop the land properly. The debris incident was clearly a contractor error, and instead of handling it through proper legal channels, he engaged in vigilante justice and terrorism." The interviewer blinked. "Did you just call him a terrorist? He dumped 8 tons of debris on my property in the middle of the night. What would you call it? Mrs. Whitmore, is it true that you own a property management company that receives fees from the HOA you lead?" Her face went pale. That is completely legal and above board. My company provides valuable services. Services that you pay yourself for with HOA dues collected from your neighbors? The interview ended shortly after that, but the damage was done. Now the story was not just about the debris. It was about HOA corruption and conflicts of interest. 3 days after my debris delivery, the Nebraska Attorney General's office announced they were opening an investigation into the Meadowbrook Estates HOA's financial practices. The state environmental agency also announced they were investigating the illegal dumping and had issued a preliminary citation against the HOA for improper waste disposal. Detective Reeves called with another update. Mr. Everett, we executed a search warrant on the HOA's offices and Patricia Whitmore's property management company. We found extensive evidence of financial irregularities. It looks like she has been overcharging the HOA for services and pocketing the difference. We are talking potential fraud charges. What about the illegal dumping? We have emails between Mrs. Whitmore and the demolition company. She specifically instructed them to dispose of the debris at coordinates that match your property. She claimed it was vacant land. The demolition company followed her instructions without verifying. They will face fines, but the criminal liability falls on the HOA and Mrs. Whitmore specifically. So she is going to be charged. The district attorney is building a case. Likely charges will be conspiracy to commit illegal dumping, criminal mischief, environmental violations, and possibly fraud related to the HOA finances. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. This had consumed my life for weeks now. My farm still had tons of debris on it. My crops were destroyed. And even if Patricia Whitmore faced consequences, it would not undo the damage. Veronica must have sensed my mood because she showed up that evening with takeout and beer. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset over the debris-scattered field. You know, she said, you could have just let the legal system handle this from the start. Would it have worked? She was quiet for a moment. Probably not, or at least not quickly. They would have dragged it out, blamed the contractors, and eventually settled for pennies on the dollar. Your stunt with the debris forced everyone to pay attention. Sometimes the system needs a push. I might still face charges. The DA is not going to charge you. You are the victim here, and you have public sympathy. Plus, you self-reported and cooperated with the investigation. At worst, you will face some civil penalties that will get rolled into the larger settlement. The HOA's emergency board meeting had not gone well for Patricia Whitmore. According to news reports, the other board members had voted to remove her as president and terminate the management contract with her company. 2 board members had resigned in protest over the illegal dumping, and the remaining members had issued a public apology. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA deeply regrets the incident involving Mr. Everett's property, their statement read. This was an unauthorized action taken without the full board's knowledge or approval. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement and will make restitution for all damages. That was nice, but I wanted to see actual consequences. 2 weeks after my debris delivery, Patricia Whitmore was arrested. The charges were extensive: conspiracy to commit illegal dumping, criminal mischief, environmental violations, fraud, and embezzlement related to the HOA funds. Her booking photo showed a far different woman from the polished HOA president. She looked haggard and angry. Her lawyer issued a statement claiming she was being made a scapegoat, but the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the financial records, the work orders with her signature, all of it pointed to a deliberate campaign to dump debris on my property and profit from the HOA she was supposed to serve. The demolition company, Killian Demolition Services, reached out to me through their lawyer. They offered to pay for half the cleanup costs in exchange for me not pursuing legal action against them. Their position was that they had been misled by the HOA about the disposal site, but they acknowledged they should have verified the coordinates before dumping. Veronica negotiated a better deal. They would pay for 75% of the cleanup costs and provide testimony against Patricia Whitmore in the criminal case. In return, we would not sue them. They agreed. The cleanup took another 2 weeks. A specialized hazardous waste company removed all the asbestos and lead-contaminated materials. A regular hauling company took the rest to a proper landfill. My western field looked like it had been through a war, but at least the debris was gone. The corn crop was a total loss for that section, which meant I would not see income from those acres this year. But the HOA's insurance company had been forced to cut me a check for $30,000 to cover the crop loss, and that was before the larger lawsuit was settled. Patricia Whitmore's trial was scheduled for 6 months out, but her lawyer was already making noise about a plea deal. The evidence against her was too strong to fight. The district attorney's office told me they were confident she would face jail time. In the meantime, the new HOA board reached out to me. A nice woman named Dorothy Chen, who had been elected as the new president, called me directly. "Mr. Everett, on behalf of the Meadowbrook Estates community, I want to apologize sincerely for what happened to you. What Patricia did was unconscionable. We would like to make things right." "I appreciate that, Mrs. Chen, but I have been dealing with harassment from your HOA since before this incident. The dumping was just the worst example." "I understand. I want you to know that we have reviewed all previous actions taken regarding your property. Several board members, myself included, believe the HOA overstepped its authority. Your farm is not even within our jurisdiction. We had no right to demand you change anything about your property." "That is refreshing to hear. We would like to offer a formal settlement. In addition to the insurance payment you have already received, the HOA will pay an additional $100,000 for damages, distress, and legal fees. We will also issue a formal statement acknowledging your property rights and pledging that the HOA will no longer attempt to interfere with your farm operations." I discussed it with Veronica. "That's a good offer," she said. "With the insurance payment and this settlement, you are looking at around $130,000. That more than covers your losses and legal fees." "What about the criminal case against Patricia?" "That proceeds regardless. This is a civil settlement with the HOA as an organization. Patricia faces criminal charges from the state." I accepted the settlement. The HOA issued their public statement, and it was surprisingly humble. They acknowledged their past overreach, apologized to me specifically, and promised to reform their governance practices. They even invited me to attend a community meeting to discuss being good neighbors going forward. I declined the meeting invitation. I had spent enough time dealing with the HOA. 3 months after the debris incident, Patricia Whitmore accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit illegal dumping and fraud. The other charges were dropped in exchange for her cooperation and a guilty plea. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and ordered to pay restitution of $60,000, which covered the cleanup costs that insurance had not paid and additional environmental remediation. The judge's comments during sentencing were pointed. "Mrs. Whitmore, you held a position of trust in your community. Instead of serving that community honorably, you abused your position for personal profit and engaged in criminal behavior that harmed an innocent person. Your actions were calculated, deliberate, and showed a stunning lack of regard for the law and your neighbors. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the consequences of your choices." I attended the sentencing hearing. Patricia Whitmore looked at me once, and I saw not remorse, but rage. She was angry that she had been caught, angry that I had fought back, angry that her scheme had collapsed, but she was not sorry. That was fine. I did not need her apology. I needed justice, and I got it. Life slowly returned to normal after that. I replanted the western field, and while I lost a year of income from that section, the settlement money more than made up for it. The fence was repaired. The environmental remediation company gave me a clean bill of health for the soil after treatment. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA, under new leadership, actually did become better neighbors. Dorothy Chen stopped by once with a basket of baked goods and a genuine apology. Some of the subdivision residents who had opposed Patricia Whitmore's aggressive tactics reached out as well. One couple even asked if they could buy fresh corn from me during harvest season. I said yes. No point in holding grudges against people who were not involved. Veronica and I grew closer through the whole ordeal. She had stood by me even when I did something probably illegal and definitely inadvisable. She had helped me navigate the legal system and kept me from making stupid decisions. Well, stupider decisions. 6 months after the debris incident, on a cool October evening, she was helping me harvest corn when I asked her to move in with me. She said yes without hesitation. "You know," she said as we worked, "when I first started dating you, I thought dating a farmer would be peaceful and quiet, maybe boring. And instead you got criminal trials and HOA drama. Instead, I got a man who stands up for himself and does not let bullies win. I will take that over boring any day." The farm did well that year despite the losses. The settlement money let me invest in some new equipment, and I expanded my soybean acreage. I was not getting rich, but I was making a living doing something I loved on land that was mine. Sometimes at night, I would stand on my porch and look toward the subdivision lights in the distance. I thought about Patricia Whitmore in prison, probably still angry, still convinced she had been wronged. I thought about the HOA board members who had enabled her for years until it blew up in their faces. I thought about how close I had come to just accepting the dumping and trying to fight it through normal legal channels, which probably would have taken years and cost more than I would have recovered. I did not regret loading up that debris and delivering it to Patricia Whitmore's house in the middle of the night. Was it legal? No. Was it smart? Debatable. But it had forced everyone to pay attention. It had exposed the corruption. It had led to real consequences for people who thought they were above the law. Sometimes the system works, but sometimes it needs help. Sometimes it needs someone willing to load 8 tons of garbage into a dump truck and return it to sender. Tommy still laughed about it whenever we got together for beers. "That was the best night work I ever did," he would say. "Sam, if you ever need to deliver anything else to anyone, you call me first." "I think one debris delivery is enough for a lifetime," I would reply. But I was grateful for his help. I was grateful for Veronica's support. I was grateful for Detective Reeves, who had been tough but fair. I was grateful for the new HOA leadership that actually wanted to be good neighbors. And in a weird way, I was even grateful for Patricia Whitmore, because she had taught me an important lesson. Bullies rely on victims being too tired, too scared, or too poor to fight back. They count on the legal system being slow and expensive. They count on their victims eventually giving up. The moment you refuse to be a victim, the moment you fight back in ways they did not expect, their whole scheme falls apart. I never wanted to be the guy who dumped 8 tons of construction debris on someone's lawn at 3 a.m, but I would do it again if I had to, because some messages need to be delivered with emphasis. The debris was gone from my farm. The crops were growing again. The HOA had backed off. Patricia Whitmore was in prison where she belonged, and I was still here on my land, farming my fields, living my life the way I chose. That was victory enough. A year after everything started, I was featured in a farming magazine article about standing up to HOA overreach. The reporter asked me if I had any advice for other farmers or rural property owners dealing with aggressive homeowners associations. "Document everything," I said. "Know your rights, get a good lawyer, and do not be afraid to make noise when you are being wronged. The legal system works better when there is public attention and pressure. Also, maybe keep the number of a good hauling company handy." The reporter laughed. "Are you advocating for vigilante justice?" "I am advocating for creative problem-solving within the bounds of returning people's property to them. If someone leaves 8 tons of garbage on your land with their address all over it, it seems neighborly to return it." The article ran with a photo of me standing in my cornfield, Max sitting beside me, the farmhouse in the background. The headline read, "Farmer Takes on HOA and Wins, a Story of Standing Your Ground." I framed that article and hung it in my office, not because I was proud of the conflict, but because I was proud that I had not backed down. I was proud that I had fought for my land and my rights. I was proud that I had won. Veronica hung next to it a photo someone had taken of Patricia Whitmore's house covered in debris, the one that had gone viral. "So you never forget what you are capable of when pushed," she said. We were married the following spring in a simple ceremony at the farm. Dorothy Chen from the HOA sent a nice wedding gift and a note that said, "Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness and significantly less drama." Tommy was my best man, and he gave a toast about the time we went on a late-night delivery mission that no one would ever forget. The guests who did not know the full story looked confused. Those who did know laughed until they cried. Life on the farm settled into a comfortable rhythm. We had our struggles, like any farm does. Weather, equipment breakdowns, commodity price fluctuations, the usual challenges of agriculture. But we never again had to deal with an HOA trying to force us out or use our land as a dump. The Meadowbrook Estates subdivision continued to grow, but under Dorothy Chen's leadership, they focused on being good neighbors rather than trying to control everything around them. Some subdivision residents even became regular customers at my farm stand, buying fresh vegetables and eggs. Patricia Whitmore served 14 months of her 18-month sentence and was released on good behavior. I heard she moved to Colorado to live with her sister. She never apologized, never acknowledged wrongdoing beyond the minimum required by her plea deal. Some people never learn, but that was not my problem anymore. I had my farm, my wife, my dog, and my peace of mind. The western field, where all the debris had been dumped, ended up being my most productive section the next year. Something about all that soil remediation and treatment had actually improved the fertility. Veronica called it karma. I called it ironic. Either way, I harvested a record yield from that field, and every bushel felt like a small victory. Sometimes I still think about that night, rolling into Patricia Whitmore's driveway at 3:30 in the morning, dumping 8 tons of debris onto her perfect lawn. I think about the look on her face that morning when she saw what I had done. I think about how she must have felt, violated and angry, her perfect world disrupted by the consequences of her own actions. Good. She deserved that, and more. I am not a vindictive person by nature. I would have been happy to live quietly on my farm, grow my crops, and never have any conflict with anyone. But when someone comes after you, when they violate your property and your rights, when they think they can bully you into submission, sometimes you have to hit back hard enough that they never think about messing with you again. The debris delivery accomplished that. It was probably not the most mature response. It was probably not what a lawyer would recommend, but it worked. It got attention. It exposed corruption. It led to justice. And honestly, it felt really good to watch 8 tons of garbage crash down onto Patricia Whitmore's driveway, destroying her lawn just like she had destroyed my field. Call it petty, call it vengeance, call it justice. I call it fair. The farm thrives now. I expanded into organic vegetables and started a small CSA program. Veronica cut back her hours at the law firm to help manage the business side of things. We are talking about kids, maybe in a year or two. We are building a life here, on this land, on our terms. And if another HOA or anyone else ever thinks about dumping garbage on my property again, well, I still have Tommy's number. I still have access to dump trucks. And I still remember exactly how satisfying it felt to return unwanted debris to its rightful owner. That is the real lesson from all of this. When someone wrongs you, when the system is slow or inadequate, when bullies think they can get away with anything, sometimes the most effective response is direct, immediate, and impossible to ignore. I returned their garbage to them, and in doing so, I took back my power, my peace, and my property. That is the story of how I dealt with an HOA that used my farm as a dump site. That is the story of how I loaded it all up and delivered it to their president's house. That is the story of how I won. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat.